Leader Pelosi, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
To be here. Thank you.
You've been around a while. What does it mean to you when you hear a president of the United States say that Russia and the United States are kind of one and the same, we're no better than they are?
When the President of the United States says that, he doesn't know what he doesn't know. It's so totally irresponsible, strategically incoherent, incompetent, reckless, and rash. And it just places him in a different place from the usual debate between Democrats and Republicans. We're talking about somebody who's just totally irresponsible.
And what does it say about Donald Trump and his sort of bromance with Vladimir Putin?
Well, in this office, I have the picture of Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can do almost anything. Without it, almost nothing. And he demonstrated that in his presidency, Abraham Lincoln did. And I think all of this is about making sure the American people know the truth. What he said in the campaign about Wall Street, he has completely overturned. Now it's Wall Street first. Wall Street first. And look at his cabinet, look at his appointments, look at his actions, overturning Wall Street reform, investment rules, fiduciary rule, consumer protection, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's all about Wall Street. It's really tragic, but if the American people knew what this means to them and their lives, he couldn't get away with this, nor could the Republicans in the Congress. And mind you, not one of them voted for Wall Street reform when it came forward. 3 of them did in the conference report, 3 in the House of Representatives, out of 180 something, whatever it was at the time.
I want to come back to Wall Street in just a second, but on Russia and Vladimir Putin, you suggested that we just don't know, right, what is motivating Donald Trump, and how do we get to the bottom of it?
Well, we've called upon the FBI to make known to the American people whether they're doing an investigation of the personal, political, and financial ties of Donald Trump to Russia. He claims he has no business interest in Russia. That's not the question. What are the business interests the Russians have in him? What is it that the Russians have on him that he would even flirt with the idea of lifting sanctions? What do they have on him that he's already lifted the sanctions on the very agencies, the successor of the KGB that did the hacking of the U.S. Elections and disrupted our elections? And what do they have on him that he would lionize Donald Trump and put some kind of justification for it, which isn't a justification, it's a rationalization, it's a mistake, and it's really beneath the responsibility, forget the dignity, that's long gone, of the presidency with this president.
Well, I'm sure that everybody watching this interview, Madam Leader, believes that the American people have a right to know what those ties are.
Exactly.
Is the FBI under any obligation to do this investigation? Could Trump block this investigation? What are the chances that it will really happen?
Well, when I asked this director of the FBI why they won't tell us if they're doing an investigation, he said, well, there are a couple of reasons why we choose to reveal an investigation or not. One is we don't reveal it if we think that heightens the awareness of our target to the fact that we're investigating them and what the consequences of that. We would say we're doing an investigation if it was of significant public interest. Well, I think we've met that standard, and I don't know why he isn't telling us that. But he has a responsibility to investigate what I just described. And by the way, one of the answers to it is for the president to release his tax returns.
Right. And of course, the FBI director had a different standard when it came to Hillary Clinton's emails.
No, not even a different standard. Totally irresponsible. Just not only her emails, but with the confidence, the highest confidence of all of our intelligence agencies, that was the Russians who were hacking our system. 100% highest confidence.
Right.
The director of the FBI said, I'm not signing that statement in the first week of October because it's too close to the election. 2 weeks later, he frivolously puts out there that he's looking into these emails from whatever his name is, I'm not even going into it. Laptop
Yeah.
And which may not be significant, he said, which may not be significant. That was like 10 days before the election. So 2 weeks before that, it was too late. These were his words, too late to sign something because it could have an impact on the election. 2 weeks later, he says that 2 days before that, before he said the Hillary Clinton thing, Rudy Giuliani said something is coming. So he knew. So there has to be an investigation of him. And Elijah Cummings has called for that investigation by the Inspector General, which takes us to another place. The Trump administration is trying to suppress information, discredit freedom of the press, which is the most important guardian of our democracy, freedom of the press, of the First Amendment. He's trying to silence whistleblowers in our agencies. They want to eliminate inspectors general who would investigate charges brought up by whistleblowers. They're saying that people in the agencies can't tweet out information. No, they can. No, they can. And of course, discrediting the over nearly 1,000, over 900 diplomats at the State Department who are protected by a 41-year-old law for right of private dissent, for them individually to disagree with the policy of the government, and their view that, as with others, that this is the wrong path on this Muslim ban, in my view, unconstitutional, immoral, reckless, rash, strategically incoherent, that he didn't even consult with his own people. What an insult to them. Now, one more point on that. We had a hearing on this last week, and it was fantastic. Diplomats, military, victims, that's right. And the representative of the American Evangelical Association, I think is their title, but the representative of the evangelicals disagreed with the ban and said that the American refugee resettlement plan is the crown jewel of American humanitarianism. Our refugee, the 3 million people have settled in the U.S. under that, a strict vetting, as you know, and that none of them has caused harm to our country.
Right. And if I may, I wanted to ask you about this because when anybody criticizes this or finds perhaps that the president exceeded his authority, like a certain judge from Seattle, right? The president's response is
so-called judge.
A so-called judge. I mean, what does that do in terms of undermining the separation of, or attempting to undermine the separation of powers?
Well, it is a demonstration of the poverty of knowledge on the part of the President of the United States. We certainly have disagreed with judicial opinions. That's the American way.
Right.
They have judicial review of what we do. We can publicly criticize decisions that they have made, like Citizens United, which I think has done more to undermine our democracy than almost anything you can name up until that time. And so that's not the question, to disagree. The question is to question the validity of the judge, a so-called judge. Was he the so-called president, as my colleague Adam Schiff said, a so-called president? What is this? That again is so petty, so small, so pathetic.
Right.
And we have to make sure the public knows. Because he's going out there and saying, this is keeping the American people safe. And that has a market. People think, oh yeah, well, we're vetting people so that they don't come in. No, that isn't what this is. Of course, we always subject anything to protect the American people to scrutiny to make sure it's doing its job. That's not what this is about. This is about a ban on Muslims that is unconstitutional and immoral and wrong. And the American people know it. And it isn't making us safer, it's making us less safe. And we have veterans who have come forward and said this, the people who helped us in these countries are now being endangered, and that doesn't make the American people safer. And for these and other reasons, what the president is doing is dangerous, reckless, rash, strategically incoherent.
And national security advisors have said that same thing. You have talked to reporters earlier today about it's hard to keep track of all these flurry of actions on the part of the new president, but he did act to repeal Dodd-Frank, the only new protections that we have on Wall Street. What does that mean for the average consumer?
Well, the repeal of Wall Street reform, because most people don't know what Dodd-Frank, you know, the two wonderful members of Congress, The repeal of Wall Street reform strikes right to the heart of the financial stability of America's working families, and they have to know that. It is contrary to what he said in the campaign, where he attacked Wall Street and attacked anybody who was associated with Wall Street and the rest, and came in and loaded up his cabinet and his staff with people from Wall Street, including a white supremacist, Bannon, who also is former Goldman Sachs employee. But the thing about it is that make sure we all understand this proliferation of ideas, this manic, there's just all different things being able to, is a technique so that nobody pays attention for a long enough period of time to any one of them. It's a diversionary tactic. He's an illusionist, some say a puppet, but nonetheless, whatever he is, it's dangerous to families and other living things, children in our country. So when he does these things relating to, we say transparency and openness, openness is a characteristic of a democracy, secrecy is a characteristic of a tyranny, and he's moving toward that, to shut down. So we don't just take each little thing, we can't put it under its frame. A lessening of democracy. And that was when he said he won by, how pathetic that was.
Yeah.
He won the popular vote, because that was his premise, to say we've got to suppress the vote in other ways by putting up barriers to participation, because I won the popular vote. It's all a technique, but that's all under the diminishing of democracy. And our role is to have security of our democracy, security of our country, and security of our economy. And when they talk about Dodd-Frank, this is an undermining of the financial security of our country and of people. So they want, this is their gift to Wall Street. I mean, we just came through a sports weekend. Score one for Wall Street when he does the overturning of the Wall Street reform. Score one for Wall Street when he overturns the rule that protects investors with the fiduciary rule. Score one for Wall Street when he wants to overturn the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Score one for Wall Street every step of the way when he puts these people in power to do that. And they're having a giggle fit over it. Do you see these people on CNBC? They're having a giggle fit over it. And the Wall Street Journal reported today that the 6 largest banks in our country will get a windfall of $100 billion. We want to know what his business's windfalls get. Show us your tax returns. But this is dangerous because it's a systemic assault on financial security for families. It takes us right back to where we were in 2008, when the chairman of the Fed said, on a Thursday night, if we do not act immediately, we will not have an economy by Monday, because of their actions that he wants to take us right back to. So this is a fight. This is a big fight. And we, again, public sentiment is everything. The people have to know. Some people have given him a pass because he appointed a justice that's going to protect, their ideological views on a woman's right to choose, or gay marriage, marriage equality, whatever it is, whatever that category is. So they give them a pass to choose to ignore it because that's their top priority. But then they shouldn't be surprised that the election has ramifications that affect them, their ability to educate their children, stay in their home, keep their job, protect their pensions. This is who they elected.
Okay, you've seen the Muslim ban, you see the repeal of Dodd-Frank, you see the housing executive order that he signed.
Yeah, and that's very important because because he changed the subject right away and we're on to something else. The FHA was very important to America's
People lost track of that. That's right. We move so fast that there are all these things happening. So the question is, how do we survive, right, as Democrats or as progressives, and how do we respond? And that's a question for congressional Democrats, Senate Democrats, and for people at large. What do you tell people who have given up hope now? What can we do about Donald Trump?
Well, I don't think we should ever give up hope, because hope was kept alive with the Women's March. I mean, I tell you, on that Friday, with the peaceful transfer of power, with the new inauguration of a new president, was very discouraging. The next day, we awakened to the invigoration of millions of people on the streets across the country, across the world.
I know you marched in San Francisco. We marched
in the driving rain, and unintended, it didn't dampen anybody's spirits. But my grandchildren, my daughter, were here, and then we had 10 of our family marching, And half and half, men and women. I was very pleased with my son and husband and grandsons and the rest marching. But that gave people hope because here's the thing: people should have hope for this reason. First of all, I've never seen an election. Perhaps you have. I mean, you and I have been in this a long time. Yeah. Where the people understand the urgency of the results of the election. Right away from the start, people said, what can we do? Right. All over the question, what can we do? That's what that march said. This is what we can do. We are taking responsibility. So when you have urgency across the board, people willing to take responsibility, then you have opportunity. And we have opportunity to make it very clear to the American people we have nothing to lose. They have given us no evidence of anything we can work with them on in the first 2 weeks. Hopefully there'll be something, but we haven't seen it yet. We haven't even seen shared values in the first 2 weeks. No. So again, let's just stick together on this. Now, the other part of it is we know how to win. We know how to win. History is on our side. In 92, you remember when President Clinton was elected, they started immediately to take back the Congress, which they did in 94. Bush is president, we win, being unified, strategic, and relentless to win. But you have to be unified and strategic. And then when President Obama became president, they took it back. Running against Washington is tried and true, with a plan, with a strategy, with unity, with clarity and priorities, we can take this back. So just to get on the political side. So when the Republicans know that there may be a political price to pay, they might alter their attitude toward Wall Street reform, a woman's right to choose, guns, immigration, the list goes on. And then the other part of it that is reason to be hopeful, in my view, is that, as you know, when we lose the White House, a lot of talent goes home. And those people will be supporters in elections at the state, the municipal, state, local elections, as well as the federal. Some will run, some will be an intellectual resource, some will be a political resource, some will be a financial resource. But we have more resources at the local level. And in this election, it's about electing governors as well as House, et cetera, but electing governors and state houses so that we can go into redistricting in a different way. So we have a goal, we have a strategy, we have urgency, people taking responsibility, we have opportunity, and that makes me hopeful.
On that point, I just want a final question is, you and I both have something in common. We were both chairs of the California Democratic Party. Right. So what does the Democratic, and we're dealing with this new administration, the Democratic Party is also going over a seat change. We're electing a new DNC chair, and people are saying, how do we bring back the party?
We do every 4 years, yeah.
What's the Democratic Party have to do so that we can get back the House in 2018, hopefully?
Well, my reason to be hopeful is that the members of Congress, House and Senate, have a stronger voice with a Republican in the White House than we had with the Democratic. President Obama was our voice. And from the standpoint of winning congressional elections, we now can every day say, this is what they're doing, this is what it means to you. When we had, as minority leader, as Democratic leader with President Bush as president, and working with Senator Daschle at the time, we were the voice of the opposition. Then as Speaker with President Bush in the White House, we were the voice of the opposition, but of course we had the Congress so we could get things done. The Republicans will find out that their voice is diminished because people are paying attention more to what President Trump has to say. He's the leader of the Republican Party now. Yeah, but the American people have to remember, and part of your answer to your question is, that the Republicans in Congress are a mirror image of President Trump in what they want to do. None of them supported Dodd-Frank when it first came up in Congress, 3 of them on the conference report. That shows you that. Immigration, even when the Senate passed a bipartisan bill in the House, they wouldn't bring it up. Guns, you name it, a woman's right to choose, they are there with Trump all the way. in fact, in some cases, they're worse than President Trump, depending if he keeps his word on Social Security and Medicare. But they want to, their goal on Medicare is to eliminate it. What's his name? Gingrich, when he was Speaker, he said Medicare should wither on the vine. They don't believe in it. We have to make sure the public knows that they know that, and that they have in their budget a program to eliminate the guarantee of Medicare. Medicare is a guarantee. You eliminate it, you eliminate what is Medicare, and that which is Medicare. So again, it's about making the distinction, but understanding. How many times have people said to you, how long do you think it's going to take before the Republicans in Congress separate themselves from Trump? No, they are exactly each other on every subject except their worst on Medicare and Social Security, so far as we can see. I don't know how long it'll take for Trump to abandon that commitment, but he did say to the Speaker, anything you want, I'm with you. I'm with you. So that's what it is. So we just have to make sure the American people know. If I would fault us, it's about not conveying our message clearly enough. Our values are what they are. We are unified by them. People say to me, oh, you herd cats, you keep them together. I said, I do not. I do not. Our values unite us. And our caucus is united around the financial stability of America's working families. Whatever issues we may have some disagreements on, that, we know who we are, very different from who they are. And they're about trickle down, we're about trickle up. We're about a living wage throughout our country, and they're about appointing a Secretary of Labor who doesn't support the minimum wage. They have a Secretary of Education that doesn't support public education. They have a head of the EPA who's in denial about climate. The list goes on and on. But the fact is, it all comes back to opportunity, fairness, and that's where we are, and that's not where they are. And we have to make that clear in no uncertain terms, with no thought of we can compromise on this or that, because we cannot compromise. We can compromise on a timetable or some amount of money and a budget, but we will not compromise on our values. And what I say to them is, show me your values, show me your budget. And their budget is very destructive to America's working families.
More challenges than ever, but more opportunities than ever, and we're just happy that you're there leading the charge. Thank you, Madam Leader.
Well, thanks for your time today.